think regulation theory is a training theory with SSR. And second, for us, US is very important because it was the first to enter into the 40s crisis and are supposed to be the first to explore the way out of the crisis. And why to study American CEO is just to try to understand the meso level, to say what is the role of corporate governance in the complementarity of the institutions that govern the SSR. In this diagram, you see an incredible stagnation of real wage of average workers and the boom of CIO remuneration. It is from Thomas Piketty and says wonderful studies. And what is very interesting in this configuration is that back in 29, you had a clear division in the fact that the poor people earn their earnings via wage and the rich people from rents. Now, the trick of CIO is that they still get wage on top of profit income and income from finance. So this is very, so they are playing the game, a very important game. On one side they are wage earners, the other side they are financiers, the other side they are entrepreneurs, and it will play some role in the interpretation I will try to give. And therefore we are playing the game. So what should I do? First, I will try to destroy Jensen-Meklin argument. I think this is ridiculous, even if my student convinced permanently that I'm wrong. A political economic approach is far better than a typical neoclassical one. Third element, I will review exactly the question of political alliance. My answer will be very clear. Instead of being controlled by financiers, CIO have an alliance with them to curb down a little more workers. So in essence, the discourse is the opposite of the reality, what you observe. And then I will conclude on the question of finance-led accumulation. So let's go very quickly. I think the neoclassical theory is very naive. Jensen-Meklin was thinking that if you gave a part of the capital to the manager, they behave according to the interest of the shareholders. Which is false, because you should give it 100%. As soon as you give it 100%, they will only twist in their perks and so on. So I never understood the success when you have of this model, because this model is false. We can prove it, of course. Then why the model has been permeating? Because you have mobility of CIO. They can fight two people and they get golden parachutes. They have master of administration, business administration, so they are very clever. You remember with the analysis, it is your right to work the company. And then, of course, since US is leading, everything should be perfect in US. And then, okay. I think this is not very convincing. Therefore, why? You have many of what is very impressive, and still now, you have awful manager quitting the job with $100 million as golden parachute or retirement fund. The second element, much more interesting, is a paper from my friend Dominique Plion. In dark line, you have the ex-post economic valuation of the profit rate, Marxist sense. And in the weak line, you have the company evaluation of profit given the very low interest rate. So if you understand clearly, the surge of the rate of return of firms was mainly low interest rate in the US plus clever financial management. The real rate of return has been only increasing by 1%. So the revolution, this was more efficient, it's not the case. The same thing in France, but you don't care about France. But yes, I know. I read the Economist of this week. We need Mrs. Thatcher. Okay. What this example is better? The best form is the family-owned company because they internalize and have better rate of return, better social performance, and so on. So if you have the competition model, family or private equity are winning over the company. So the argument of efficiency is totally silly and misrepresenting. I will go very quickly, since of course the CIO is appointing the committee given their appointment. Economic studies do show that when you appoint the people governing your income, it's not a surprise that you get high income. So compare it to the idea of a consultant giving the set of the market and then you climb up the level of the market. So all the mechanisms are supposed to govern competition, de facto organizing the escalation of remuneration. So I will go quickly. Yes. On this issue, I will present only this diagram. On the lower side, you have the neoclassical theory. No novelty, no innovation, no stochastic. And then you imagine that if financial markets were perfect, it would be wonderful to have indexing on stock option. But imagine that you have a strong path dependence. I'm benefiting from the choice of the previous CEO. I have very good, you have a good macro, low interest rate, high interest rate, I grow. Everybody is a genius in management. And imagine now of imperfection of financial markets. I'm adding these three elements, and then you totally disconnect the micro efficiency combined with the macro inefficiency. So you see clearly, and the trick of neoclassical theory is to reason in partial equilibrium. If you have a full equilibrium, the rationale totally vanished. Let me hurry. Yes. And the market for corporate governance does not exist because when you are a CIO, you only know ex post is good or not, and therefore it's totally nonsense to imagine that you can have a market of computer and a market of CIO. By definition, it is idiosyncratic, and so on. I could develop. Okay, so let me now have a joke about Mr. Jensen. Because oh my Lord, this is because people are not in a lack of moral integrity. So the rescue boat of the neoclassical theory is that people are not moral. They should go to church more frequently and should respect. This is silly, and I will try because you see. Let me develop my own idea. Because what I was thinking, it was a total collapse. And if you prolong a little bit, you have again a climbing up of CEO remuneration. So for some people, it was a craziness due to the internet bubble. But now you have again big scandals in the US, backdating and so on. Then I will explain in the second part. I will explain to you very simply by a microanalysis. So what is very interesting, so I'm only a reader of Great American Scholar. When I read Bitch, you have the following idea. Instead of following market signals, managers build oligopolistic ground. Imagine I'm a graduate from business school and I say, oh look, I follow the market, I might not fine. No, we should build oligopolistic. Second, a manager controls accounting practice. With the general argument principle, you have a lot of freedom in order to control what you're doing. It's not the golden boy in Wall Street that can control your accounting. You are doing the accounting. Third, you have the managers do better. For example, let me the example of Airbus. The people knew 1 year ago that it's a problem that they have been hiding to the shareholders. So clearly you have asymmetric information. The insider know better. And of course, they apply this to their own remuneration. So what the core argument is the following. I think the theory we are taught in neoclassical process is very false. We suppose you have a total substitutability of factors. You have managerial talents can be remunerated as marginal productivity. You have, and then you have net profit should be zero. You should remember that given the perfect world. Whereas you have, where does profit come from? From the complementarity of firm-specific assets. And my best example is 1,000 experts visited Toyota, and nearly nobody outside Toyota has been able to deliver the quality and the productivity and the rate of profit of Toyota. Second element, top manager build this architecture. They know because they are doing it every day. Third, they have a drastic control of the allocation of cash flow. You remember the famous analogy of Marx. In the firm, you have a direct control over the allocation. And the bigger the firm, the bigger the autonomy of the allocation. And of course, positive profit derives from the fact that we cannot copy from outside in this therefore, you have a very good explanation on this diagram. You have the reported profit by managers through time. They continue during 3 years to extrapolate growth, whereas the ex-post profit is the baseline one. It is a very impressive one. They were mastering so much accounting, but they told lie, and this lie were over-representing profit by $100 billion a year. So clearly, you have many evidence. So I will very quickly this issue. What is very interesting, they have been conducting in the US by is the mobility of capital that being converting this micro power into macro power. Saying, if you tax me too much, I will go abroad. For example, I was very impressed back in the 50s, millionaire was taxed 75.9%. Now, as you might know, and has been decreasing still more, they are convincing that the rich people could go to paradise, and then they should drastically decline. So they converted micro power into macro power. For example, they refuse to have stock option to be governed by any regulation. Now, this has been changing at the boom period. And therefore, it is very interesting, the shift of the burden of taxes is shifting from corporate to workers. And this introduces, how many minutes do I have? No, now left. 10? Okay, good. Okay. Okay. And then, what is very interesting, why finance is so important? Because if you have productive capital, you have to sell it. It's not so easy. When you have finance capital, you can easily shift from one branch to another, and you can organize wealth transfer at an incredible speed. And it highlights why the peak in the inequality of wealth is clearly synchronized to the booms of the stock market. Because by definition of this market, you shift very easily wealth from one owner to another one, and a very silent mechanism in a sense. A student of mine is studying the impact of financial crisis on this sudden shift of wealth, which is very impressive. Yes, if you look abstractly, and you review the three of the firm, the most impressive surprise is that you end up an alliance between top manager and finance. Whereas the stakeholders are very numerous ones. You can ally with the consumer. You can ally with civil society. I'm a good citizen, I respect everyone. You can ally with workers, or you can lobby on state. And what is very impressive with the finance-led regime I will speak about is during the 90s, the firm has been totally dominated by only one of the stakeholders, what is to say, the financier. Let me now visit my own interpretation and maybe find out similar reasoning as you propose on SSA, social political alliance governing an accumulation regime. Let me review according to regulation theory what we propose. In the 60s, you had a very specific alliance in the sense that you had a capital labor compromise between wage earner and manager. The compromise was real wage, and you accept the transformation of work organization, the permanent shift, the labor intensity, and so on. This was the core, and you do not block technical change. And the consumer were the so in essence, the alliance were stabilizing demand, and you have a very patient financial markets, and you have Pax Americana. So you have a domestically governed, very different from Japan, Germany, and so on. So it was the nice time of why the social SSA regulation was national, because de facto you had this compromise were deeply national in the sense that we are deeply embedded into the idiosyncratic political process. Then let me shift a little bit one step further, and the second element is that first, as you might remember, the first strike has been stiffening of international competition. You should remember back in the IT, in the mid-80s, the American was fearing Japanization, in the sense that the industrial sector will be destroyed, and therefore by competition, therefore the managers have been using this direct pressure on wage or by just in time or by total quality just to discipline workers. And they say to them, you will benefit from free trade as consumer, but please accept the permanent restructuring of job and wages. So you have a totally new compromise. Let me add a step further. Then you have financialisation. And in this case, you pretend to have a quiproquo. Let me be transparent, and then I will defend your interest. Whereas in this sense, consumers are only happy if they get their wealth, for example, pension funds, and as wage earner, they are supposed to take much more risk because the stabilization of the rate of return has a direct consequence the flexibility of the wage earning, and therefore they are only earning as consumers, and if they benefit from the surge of the financial market, and you have a totally different political alliance. And since nobody is perfect, the finance is highly complex. You have Adam Smith division of labor within finance. You have digital investor, financial analysis, auditors, fund manager, rating. And then when they say collapse, they say it's not me, it's him. So you have a lack of responsibility, and then you have the lawyers, and then you have the state as a last resort. So this is very interesting. You have the contradiction, okay. And then you end up with the following idea. Finally, you are the de facto alliance of, no, we skip this, no, we skip. Okay, so it was a story of the links between productive capital and financial capital. In a sense, you have the crisis of the big corporation, the separation of property and possession, and then you try to invent the incentive mechanism, but as the Enron story, which is summarized here, shows, you are so powerful that you subtract this new derivative from any public governance or any taxation or any insertion into the accounting, and therefore you have a wonderful bubble according which you have the following mechanism. Insiders do exploit their knowledge in order to expropriate the wage earners and, of course, all the shareholders. And, of course, you have the counter. So, therefore, the core of my argument is the following. Stock options were supposed to discipline CIO. De facto, they have been used in a way in order to convert the micro power of CIO into their becoming very rich using wage, bonus, and stock options. So in essence, they are playing like in casino. They play on every side, and of course they win at any case since they are covered. They are sometimes wage earners, sometimes they are paid by bonus, and sometimes by market. So what a wonderful position. Wage earners only used to have only wage, and now they used to look at pension fund. Let me then why is that and what are the macro consequences? It is a long story. For me, it takes 25 years to understand this model. So you have many unintended consequences. For example, at the early beginning, I remember quite well, the Americans want to mimic the Japanese. The MIT study made in the world. So you should remember that you want to mimic the Japanese. And then, by a very complex phenomenon, you have international opening, crisis for this regime, loss of power, bargaining power of workers by unemployment, by lawyers blocking unionization, and so on. They have to accept pension funds. In my interpretation, the so-called ERISA law by 76 play a huge role because you are shifting from pay-as-you-go to pension fund, and it converts wage earners into people looking on TV set what has been the stock market evolution today, which is a total fraud. If you go to Japan, in France, people never look to this. So, and it transformed the way, and the CIO do benefit from this element under the alliance of so-called shareholder value. So, the core argument is that you are adding the weakening of workers, the innovation of finance, and then like in judoka, to convert finance into a tool for managers to discipline workers and to get rich themselves. Then, what are the macro consequences? I think in this model, it is totally opposite to the Fordist model. You think you are rich, therefore you can consume. You are, since the financial market is very adverse to loss of investment. My interpretation of productivity would be the following. Why do we have stable wage, value added, and rate of profit? Because you are saving in the value added capital ratio. In the sense, you economize because the capital market is very prone in order to control that you do not overinvest. What is totally missing in China, for example. And therefore, you are the following. Careful in the investment is why you have more buoyant profit than investment. But you still have people that think are rich due to the evolution of the stock market. And therefore, you have a consumption-led regime in which the key variable is the evolution of the stock market. And if you compute this, you are very surprised that at least one country can do this. Yes, and in this diagram, I will not go on. Why it is finance-led? Because all the institutions, central bank, welfare, corporation, taxation, public spending, and all governed under the control of finance. Are tracked by coding, by risk premium, and so on. They do like this is why, and for some high value of the parameter, if you have if the ratio of wealth on stock market over GDP is very high, you might have a virtuous circle in which finance could exist. If you are in Germany or in France or in Japan, and you introduce the same element, you are losing. Both profits are lower and wages are lower. And so clearly, what was supposed to be a universal therapy, de facto has been hurting. And my interpretation of the Japanese crisis is that Japanese did not add anything to gain by financialization. The profit has been hurt. Workers have been hurt. So in essence, you can prove in a very simple model that if you introduce financial liberalization in a wage-related regime for this type, then everybody is losing. And my reading is what has been happening both in Japan and in contemporary Germany. Okay. Then let me conclude very about 0 minutes. Okay, so I will complete. Okay. First, I think neoclassical people are kidding, are not serious, really. I was amazed, so I was interested by the realistic theory. I really underestimate the value that in a form of totally complementary assets that can be shifted by because Mr. God cannot shift, and even in Islam, it's true, but it's not magnificent, an illusion. No, they have intrinsic power at the micro level, and it is why you have this element can be convert this into their remuneration as soon as you have a liquidification of their remuneration. And if the stock market collapses, they become wage earners again. So it is a very nice job. Please don't go to the economic department for students, go to business school, because then you will be if you are risk adverse, you will at any time. If you are a wage earner, my Lord, you will lose nearly any time. Fifth result, CIO takes place within a long restructuring process, and my feeling it is an unintended process. It was because the US was leading independently in Wall Street. Wall Street was a little bit in the 40s era. Wall Street was a small thing, you see. Now it became the center of the world, and this has been colliding with the collapse of the 40s institutions, and therefore it was not intended. I think this maybe Mr. Greenspan finally understood this regime. But afterwards, I think it was not planned at all. My reading, careful reading, as you can see, 6 decades of the American, nobody said, oh, one day, let's jump to the financial. It was the ex-post discovery of a very complex regime. I had no time to develop, but this regime has been criss-crossed. But, due to the securitization of the bank, the risk has been removed from the bank. And the big desperate thing is that capitalism is full of contradiction, but have been using crisis in order to invent innovation to restore the viability of capitalism. And this is an incredible flexibility, I think. Incredible. You use your own crisis in order to redesign a way of making profits. Okay. This is, I think, quite specific to just to record analysis. No, capitalism in the feudal system or the Soviet system, trust me, innovation was not that strong. It is typical of capitalism to generate people using even the bankruptcy of the system in order to become rich. 8th result, it cannot be universal. It deteriorates position for Japan. I was studying Korea. Korea has been nearly wrecked in institution just by uncarefully admitting short-term financial flow. And then you have a reform of competition, labor law, taxation, and so on, just by the fact that the system was so conducted, the same collapsed. So be careful. So my interpretation, it is why you have, I think, a finance rate.
Three quick questions or comments.
You mentioned how the CEOs pay themselves partly out of labor. The compensation is partly from work, so to speak. And that's how it's measured. Given the thievery that's taking place, how meaningful are rates of profit? How meaningful are measured rates of profit which are in fact being diminished by the legalized thievery taking place. Thus, can we really use measured rates of profit today to compare previous decades in the U.S. and make any conclusions?
Yes, I think it is. Yes, no, my friend Leo made this. The principle of private accounting, general accounting principle in the US, and the national accounting are not at all the same. But, of course, the national accounting is built on the declaration of the firm. But, as you might have noticed, full time, the people of the firm have been obliged to recognize what the profit, what the profit. It is all the standard you see. But, conceptually, you could imagine, and most of the rise of the profit was linked, we have no time to develop, because you have the cheap financial officer using low interest rate in order to use leverage effects. So in that sense, it was a clever financial management that entitled them to have a climbing rate of return plus paper profit. But in the long run, it is very impressive, the rate of profit, the so-called shareholder value should aim at a good time, 15% of rate of return. If you are computing a von Neumann model, growth model, trust me, it's strictly impossible at the macro level, because I'm sorry, I'm Straffian or von Neumann or something like this. If you compute the maximum eigenvalue of this, you will get 7-8%. You will never get 15%. So therefore, it is very interesting. The market.
The discussion afterward.
Okay.
We're just having a quick clarification.
Sorry.
Right? And Stavros, and that's going to be it for now.
On CEO pay, there's one view like Deb took and Fried at the meeting once, pays about performance, and say that it's a form of rental extraction, thievery, whatever you want to call it. The other view, like Javier and other people are saying that CEO pay tracks the stock market very well, and that's why they're making that money for the stockholders, actually. I'm skeptical of this in part because I don't know any CEO who's paid relative to the performance of the competitors, and which is what really Jensen Mechanism said should happen. And so to begin with, it's been a rigged system. But in any case, you had a chart here where you were saying something like this. I mean, what's the direction of causation? Is it if the CEO pay the result of the rising stock market or causing the rising stock market?
I think in some case, even the only incentive mechanism I know about stock option is about cooking the books. Because in essence, you know about the backtracking and so on. The big incentive, because yes, how I detected this? Because when profit rate should be stochastic variable. You have good years, bad years. What was very impressive in the bubble years is that everybody was, 70% of people was on top of the prediction during 24 months. And this is totally, because I've been making study on panel data of firms, and by definition, you have stochastic. So they were cooking by amortization, by anything, all the unknown story. And so you could detect, they were inventing the figure just to please the stock market, and incidentally, to have their stock option being exalted. So I think I was convinced before the scandal, because just looking, it was impossible. Everybody was on 70% or more than the prediction was awfully optimistic. So and I cannot understand why clever people in Wall Street were not aware that with a cookbooks, by definition, it's not, the rate of profit is like this. You want the profit like a highway, you see, directly. And this, so I think, and the backdating issue, you know, the recent scandal is backdating. Impressed that de facto the people, yes, you play back again because you are controlling the information, the date where the stock option is granted. And my bet is the following: you control this, you jail people, but they will invent other things. A jet, a special person. So by definition, you control a part, and they evade the other part. Because by definition, they are controlling the affectation of cash flow. The core message is you have micro power of managers.
Okay, so we're going to take one more question.
You defined all this statement as a new regime of accumulation.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now, the classical regulationist definition of the regime of accumulation is a form of production and extraction of surplus value that would facilitate the equalization of production with social demand. Does this description you gave of this state of affairs goes well with that definition, or you employ a new definition of regime of accumulation?
You are explicitly addressing the question why my colleague Michel Guetta following up markets and probably the new transfer value. Now, if you are imagining that whatever the fair value, you need to build an accumulation regime. The diagram I've been showing, well, I know the stock market, I anticipate my wealth, I go to the banker, I ask for credit, then I buy some goods and then they are produced and so on. And you have a wage formed by the competition to stabilize the rate of profit. It's exactly in the SSA sense of regulation, an accumulation regime. So yes, I think it is an accumulation regime. You can be fine. But be careful. It's not a universal one, and the novelty is that in spite of being governed by past and profit, this model is always governed by anticipation. It is why people are in so much. So it is a very shaky mechanism. Because in the 40s, you generate profit and then the stock market was booming. Here, you think the stock market will boom, and then you buy and you produce. And you understand why this model.
What was that word you used? It's very shaky.
Shaky. Fragile. Fragile.
Shaky.
If I